to episode 6 of Canada-India Insight, a talk show produced by Impact Media and Events Corporation and supported by Canada-India USA Development Forum. We also want to thank ICICI Bank Canada, Tangential, Surti Sweet Mart and Seneca College for their support to this platform. Today's topic is media, how relevant, responsible, sustainable. In the age of social media and online content, print media is facing serious challenges, I would say existential challenges on multiple fronts. To talk about this on the panel today, we have Adrienne Batra, Editor-in-Chief of the Toronto Sun from Toronto, Ruben Banerjee, Editor-in-Chief of the Outlook magazine from New Delhi, Nadira Hamid, CEO of the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber from New Delhi again, and your host, myself, Vipul Jani. So let me invite Nadira first to formally introduce Ruben to the listeners and viewers and readers of Canada-India Insight. So over to you, Nadira.
Thank you, Vipul, and hello everyone. I would like to thank firstly Vipul Jani and Impact Media and Events Corporation for putting together this very relevant discussion and collaborating with ICBC on this. The Indo-Canadian Business Chamber is the only chamber based in India which is dedicated to promoting and fostering trade and economic relationships between India and Canada. And today, this topic of discussion is very vital because we need to plan for the future of traditional media, which has been facing disruptions due to the emergence of the online media. And we will hear our experts, Ruben Banerjee and Adrienne Batra on this. So I will not go too much into this discussion at this time. But I would like to just give a short, very brief introduction of Ruben Banerjee and Outlook, because most of us, as Vipul said before this session started, have been reading Outlook for a very long time, and today we have the face to this magazine, and giving us this Indian perspective on this discussion is the editor-in-chief of Outlook magazine, Ruben Banerjee. Outlook is a weekly general interest Hindi and English news magazine published in India. So let's welcome Ruben, and thank you for being here with us today. Ruben is an incurable news junkie, fascinated by everything and anything that is interesting and significant and impacts the world. So Ruben, we are looking forward to you and Adrienne having a chat here today and giving us some eye-openers, hopefully, during this discussion. Over to you, Vipul, to take this forward.
Sure. Before I introduce Adrienne and we open the panel, I would just like to tell Mr. Banerjee, I've been reading Outlook right from the very first edition because when Outlook was launched, I was working in who else? India Today. So we were all waiting for it to come out to see what it looks like, and Vinod Mehta was the talk of the town at that time all over India. Outlook, in terms of the layout and the content and the designing, really changed the game to say, as far as the news magazines go, and really heralded a brand new era of competition in print magazines.
In fact, I also used to be in India Today when Outlook was launched. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I also happened to be working with India Today then.
So yeah, so we share the same background then. So good to connect with you again. So Adrienne, now to introduce Adrienne also. Anybody living in Canada doesn't, I don't need to introduce Adrienne to them. She is a household name in Canada's print and broadcast media, a member of the Board of Governors for National Newspaper Awards and the Canadian Journalism Foundation as well. Adrienne has also hosted numerous TV talk shows, and very, very charming, but very kind of, shrewd. Don't fall for the looks. She is a deadly journalist. So, so let me now
That's a
start
hell of an
the.
introduction.
Well, I mean, that's only tip of the iceberg, as they say. So
That's
let me
great.
pose the first question, and me and Nadira will co-moderate today's session. So Nadira, feel free to come in at any time, to fill in, to ask questions, and both the panelists can answer the same question, one by one, or you can also have a discussion among you as well. So first question. Print media, as we all know, we all have a print media background. I at least, except Nadira, we are all from print media for 20, 30 years. And we all know print media is facing a really existential threat today. In the age of social media, online content, many people these days don't either have time to read the long articles or to read the newspapers in their hands, and just glance through it on their mobile phones or other electronic devices. So the social media giants, as we all know, they publish our articles, for which we do a lot of research, pay the writers. So they publish those articles, but they don't share any revenue with the print media. So in many countries now, Australia, UK, and in Canada also, now media companies have started joining hands to fight this. So how do the print media face this challenge and survive? We start with our guest from India, Mr. Banerjee first, and then Adrienne.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, you are absolutely right that we are. I wouldn't say that it's an existential crisis, because as long as humanity exists, I think media will also survive, because getting information is something which is a prerequisite for any human being. Like, we need information all the time. And so as long as mankind survives, I think journalism will also survive in whichever way. I do understand that we have huge challenges, particularly the print media, but I think it's kind of generalized now. It's become more of a fashion to say that digital media is thriving while print media is suffocating. That may not be actually true. I understand that ad revenues are shifting towards digital, but in the Indian context, if I'm not mistaken, last year, the ad revenue for the digital space was somewhere around, I'm told, about 14,000 crores.
Mm-hmm.
And out of which 11,000 crores was accounted for by only Facebook and Google.
Right.
And so it left 3,000 crores. Out of these 3,000 crores, 500 crores was accounted by Times of India, which is India's biggest media giant, powerhouse. So the rest, the thousands of media outlets, we were all fighting for that piddly little 2,500 crore which was left.
Exactly.
So if someone is saying that digital media is thriving, may not be true, as these figures establish, because there is very little that we are getting. And obviously, media needs to have big bang reforms, because it's not like any other business. It's a part of a government's mandate, constitutional mandate, that the media is allowed to say what it wants to say. But to have that, the government must also ensure that we are in a position to say what we want to say. We can say what we want to say.
Yeah.
So that the government must step in and must do certain things, like even this Google and Facebook, taking away all the whatever that we earn, that revenues go to them. So, and even there are other institutional reforms which have to be undertaken. Like, it's not a very simple single solution to it, but there are a whole lot of reforms which need to go in. Like, for example, when you are talking about print media, you will be astonished to know there are more than 100,000, 150,000 periodicals in India. 150,000. Mm-hmm. Now, what essentially do. 99% you would not have ever seen or heard of them. They just take away, they are there only to take away the government ads. They print a few copies, 2-3 copies, they send it to the necessary government department and they get the ads. So this entire thing has to be shaken up and reformed. The DAV, the publicity advertisement department of the government. In fact, our revenue model itself is broken. Like we cannot be entirely dependent on the government. Like the way we are structured now, the entire media, we are so dependent. So a whole lot of things has to change. And there is no single bullet, but we need to work towards it. But I still, because despite the challenges, I still believe that there is tremendous appetite for good, credible content. And as long as mankind survives, journalism will survive. So I'm still very optimistic that we will be able to pull through.
Sure. Adrienne?
Thank you so much. That's where I want to begin, is by just thanking you for this opportunity and an incredible platform. And such an important and relevant conversation that we're having on all sides of the pond, you know, be it in India, Canada, US, wherever. This is in a situation every media outlet in the world is facing right now. And what's interesting about the situation in which we find ourselves in with COVID-19 is that the media has never been needed more. We have never been more relied upon. We have never been more relevant. We have never been more busy, frankly. We have never been more important. Yet, throughout this entire crisis, I certainly know even in my own newsroom, I had to do layoffs. I had to cut the size of the print budget. I had to cut the size of the paper. Media outlets all across Canada facing the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's print, radio, or TV. All platforms have been affected. So what the pandemic has done is sort of exasperated or accelerated, frankly, pressures that we were already facing within the industry itself. If we were to look at print specifically, which is where most of us are coming from and talking about, I actually share Ruben's optimism in terms of the ability to ensure that good journalism will always be necessary and needed, especially in this day and age, and holding governments accountable, holding their feet to the fire, you know, putting pressure on those that are comfortable and making them uncomfortable. I think there will always be a desire for that. But the challenge that we face here in Canada, for example, is that we didn't keep up. We didn't keep up with the speed by which people were going to go a palm length away to their hand to get their news. So we're catching up, and we're not as good at it as the Googles and Facebooks and the Amazons and all these other social media platforms. But then we have to do our jobs times 10 with fewer resources. Then we have to be able to accommodate that wants video content versus, you know, a lot of words, a lot of big stories. So we as editors, for example, are having to shift our own mindset in terms of what the market wants. And I think we are far behind schedule, and we're having to quickly catch up, or we will face extinction. And so I know certainly from our perspective at the Sun, and Post Media in general, which is the owner of our newspaper chain and the biggest in the country, you know, we do have a mentality of almost, it's a digital first mentality. And it's almost, because you sort of think of the newspaper, it's yesterday's news tomorrow, right? That's how the newspaper is. When you assume that everybody has already gotten the news, the breaking story about the latest murder or the latest coronavirus numbers or whatever. So you always have to think in that, we're always thinking in that regard. And sadly, sometimes the print product itself has become a secondary notion in the broader context of the newspaper. We need to grow our readership. That's the only way to recover the aging population of those for our readers at the very least. But we're only going to be able to do that through digital subscriptions, I believe. And just to this broader point, and I suspect we'll explore it further, we are in a position where many media outlets in this country, in Canada, are prepared to finally say to our federal government, you need to take on the tech giants, because they're not paying the tax on the digital advertising and they're offering it for a minuscule amount. I don't have enough money to pay for my journalists. So there has to be some leveling of the playing field. We know what's happened in UK, in Australia, and Germany, France, where there's a payment being made in perpetuity now. So we need our government partners to get on board with pushing those tech companies in order to pay us for our intellectual property. But that's not only it. It can't just be, well, they're not paying their fair share. That's a big part of it for sure. But that's not only it. We ourselves as an industry have to, I think, reflect and look inward and actually provide content that people want to read and people want to see. And I think some newsrooms around the world have really, really struggled with that. So I'm just going to leave my comments there.
Sure. Nadira, if you want to ask next question.
Yeah. So more than a question, I just have, I wanted to ask or sort of just voice something to Adrienne and ask her about the Canadian side of it, because in India, and I'm talking about print media versus online media, how is print media going to be surviving versus online media? And in India, because of the network, in the remote areas, there's still network issues. And because of the language, because they have so for them it is still very important to get to read the papers which are in their local languages, and therefore they still subscribe to to newspapers or magazines, and even I think the local SMEs which are in smaller villages, towns, they also all, they rather have the news from the newspaper on what is happening, where the business, etc., census, etc. In Canada, where there is no such either problem of connectivity or regional languages, I just wanted to put to you, is that still, how is print media going to, you think, survive versus online media, which is so fast, immediately available, etc.? That is one thing that I wanted to say. And the second thing, so that you can address both together, you and Ruben, after that. The second thing, I would feel that in India, government is still very controlling for media, and that has an effect, I think, on which newspaper is talking about what. And that is, something that journalists and media faces. What is it like in Canada? And so I just wanted to, first share this with you, Adrienne. You can, after you, then Ruben can say a few words.
Okay, thank you. So let me start by your first question and answer it sort of backwards. Canada is a very large, geographically challenged country in terms of accessibility, and I'm specifically talking about the northern regions of our country, where there really is, it's so very remote. So there are those sorts of connectivity issues. But we don't actually have a lot of media industries that service that part of the country, but because the population up there is very low, and you wouldn't be able to financially afford wanting to cater to them. So from that perspective, it's just it's more realistic for us we look at the larger cities across the country. Those are the focus, those are the targets. Now, recently, the Canadian government, much to the consternation of many of us, myself included, decided that they're going to, quote unquote, bail out the media industry to the tune of just over $600 million. And, you have to qualify for it, and there's all sorts of tax credits and grants and this. I mean, there's all sorts of manners by which the government can provide funding in order for media outlets to survive. But ultimately, that money is not going to be there in perpetuity. It's going to run out. And philosophically, you don't really want taxpayers to have to prop up your own private industry. You should be able to be providing a good enough product that people will want to buy it. But that said, we find ourselves now where we've had to take those tax credits. We've had to take those bailouts. We've had to do it. Canadian media also faces one sort of large behemoth. And this kind of touches on your independence question. Nadira, with respect to the independence of Canadian journalism. We are very experienced. Subsidize one of the largest broadcasting companies to the tune of nearly $1 billion. And we compete with them for ad money, for eyeballs, for resources, for all of those things. It's hard to do that when you're a private company and you don't get a $1 billion of taxpayers' money every year. So we have a challenge there with the CBC. And that's, really hurts. In Canada, the largest growth in print media, the largest growth is in the ethnic newspapers, the Polish ones, the Ukrainian ones, and the Indo-Canadian ones. There's a huge diaspora of many people across this country. They are actually seeing a great deal of success in terms of their niche. So I think one of the things that we need to do is actually embrace that. We need to lean into that fact that we have a very diverse population in Canada with many, many pockets of diaspora from all over the world that want and crave and desire news that's from their own backyard, but also from back home. And so I'm never going to be able to compete with the little tiny newspaper in Brampton that services the Indian community very, very well. But what I can do as more of a mainstream outlet is perhaps do stories that are more relevant to them. So that's important as well. And the second part, I think your second question was it with respect to the independence? I'm sorry. It was the independence. Yeah, no, we are very independent here. I mean, obviously, we have those that are a little more friendly to the government, a little less friendly to the government. That would be us. And then, you have the people will always leak information to. But I would say, for the most part, the conversation in this country is happening on all platforms and everywhere. And I think that social media, as useful as it has been, has really hurt us as well as an industry. And so anybody with a phone, anybody with a camera can be a journalist. But, we try to counter that whole notion of fake news and whatnot, because I think trust is still such an important thing. We still have copy editors. We still have second, third, fourth pairs of eyeballs that things go through before it hits print, whereas independent outlets that seem to be growing don't have that. And, that's how misinformation spreads. So I think that's an important element to this discussion as well.
Ruben?
Yeah, exactly.
Ruben, what are your views, Ruben?
I agree with Adrienne, because what the mainstream media gives you is editorial rigor, which social media doesn't. So we will always be better off because there is editorial rigor going on, right, in the kind of content that we are putting out. Now, I wouldn't like to be really, really dependent on the media, on the government, because that won't be a real enviable situation to me in, because you will be pandering to what the government wants. And as it is, with our revenue model slightly broken, many of us are leaning on the government for support for survival. That's not perfectly a healthy practice. And yes, there is no denying that the Indian media is extremely divided now. There are people who are totally for the government, a small minority still against the government, practicing what we essentially stand for, speaking truth to power. And I'm very proud of the fact that maybe they could be in a minority. They could be more of an exception than the rule now. But if you happen to read Indian Express editorial this morning, you will know that there is still a free and independent and a fearless media still exists. See, the challenge in India is a very large country, 1.4 billion population. Unlike the West, where print circulation is going down, we face no such challenges. Print actually circulation is going up. Right? From 30 odd million in 2006, I believe we have come to about 68 million in 2016. So print circulation is growing. Like my magazine, last 1 year, we have grown 10%. But does it mean that we have become healthier because of circulation has gone up? No, we are becoming, it's adding to the pressure because we subsidize our products so much, so heavily. And the market leader in India has brought down the price so much that the more you sell, the more loss you incur. And we really need to, for independent journalism to survive, one, yes, there has to be big reforms. Two, we need to teach, readers must understand that they need to pay for good content. It cannot be. And
Yeah.
So
that's a habit which has to grow, because you have got used to getting content free, right? So, and for a newspaper that costs 5 rupees, actually the production cost is 15 rupees. For my magazine, which I am selling for 60, well, the production cost is a lot higher. But will readers embrace this concept of paying for content? It has to come about, because that is only where the solution lies. It's not that we go to the government and get ads. That's not the ideal situation to be in, and I wouldn't like to be in that position. I would like to be self-sufficient. And given the numbers, the circulation numbers, yes, we can survive, provided people do step in and start paying for content.
right, so we have got about 6 minutes left, and I would like to squeeze in the last question. It's in two parts. One is what President Trump keeps referring to as fake news. So how do we challenge that? Also, sometimes, ads disguised as articles, advertorials, which are not mentioned as paid articles. So those kind of things, create some credibility challenges, I would say, for media. And with multiple newspapers closing down, people see reporters' jobs. They are being laid off in hundreds and thousands everywhere. So what is the incentive for the young generation to take up journalism as a career? Where are we going to find the next batch of those smart young reporters and writers when they see media companies, print media, closing down everywhere? So brief 1 minute comments from both of you.
So with respect to the fake news has been around forever, and it exists everywhere around the world. And as long as there has been opinion, there's been so-called fake news. Because what's fake news is generally an opinion that you don't agree with. So if you don't like this view, then you're like, oh, it's fake, it's BS, it's not true. There is actual fake news that is completely concocted, absolutely made up. But that goes to the point that Ruben and I were making earlier, Vipul, with respect to the editorial rigor by which we in the still mainstream media, we still have that ability to have, you fact check. It's that notion of trust but verify. So that whole thing that has really captured the zeitgeist of fake news, because of President Trump using it so often, it's always been there. But the commitment that I can make to our readers is that we will ensure our independence and check the information. Sometimes we all get duped. Sometimes, stuff's floating around on social media and you want to be on top of the zeitgeist right away. Mistakes are made. But then you fix it. And that's, again, the trust factor. And then the other question with respect to young journalists needing to come into this industry and really service the readers and service the public, because what we do, I think, is a public service. It's pretty damn tough to make that argument these days when journalists are losing their jobs left, right, and center, and their kids and their parents want them to become engineers and doctors and not journalists. So we have to make a pretty damn good case in our industry that they're more needed now than ever before.
Well, the going will be tough, I'm very sure, and next 1 or 2 years. But I believe I still have faith in the resilience that we have. And as I said, journalism will survive, and hopefully in next 1 or 2 years, we will be setting our house in order. There will be a proper revenue model. Paywalls and subscriptions will work out. If subscriptions can work for New York Times, I see no reason why it shouldn't be working for Times of India or Indian Express or Outlook or India Today in India, because our content is as good, as solid as anybody else's. So people, it's just bringing out a culture that people pay for content, and good journalism, you pay for it. So I think we will be able to set our houses in order. It will be very painful. Next few months and next few years will be very, very painful. And I keep telling my colleagues that yes, and Adrienne, I have also had to let go of people because it's survival now. So no room for sympathies, or it's very sad, but that is how it is. And we need to cut costs, trim down substantially, be more productive organizationally. And I think we can still turn around. I think it's not the end of the road for us yet. It will be tough, but possible.
Like many industries, could there be any Canada-India collaboration on the media scene?
Well, I don't mind if she offers me a job.
We always need good journalists, but you know, it's a good question, Vipul, because the amount of Canadians, Indo-Canadian, you know, here, you know, and then frankly, Nadira, I had no idea that Canada had established the Business Council right in India. It makes sense. There's so much connection and to our countries, between our two countries, that collaborations are always important, because you know what, Ruben and I know this, there's no going to be one perfect model. Someone's going to figure something out, and then we're all just going to replicate it.
Wonderful. So quick closing remark from Nadira.
Yeah. So I just want to say that first of all, a big thank you to Adrienne, because, you know, today, as Adrienne said, today more than any other time, we need news. We need, and you people are bringing that news to our homes, to us. And, and as long as the quality of news is there, the good quality of news is there, journalism is going to be always going to be lasting. And one more thing is that youngsters, as Vipul said, that, you know, what is going to inspire them to become journalists. But as long as people aspire for the truth, and there will always be people who want to aspire for the truth, there will always be journalists, reporters who will want to come in and expose or to tell us what is happening out there. So, you know, with that, I will close. And, once again, thank you to all of you. We hope that there is some collaboration with India and Canada in the media field as well. And, and good luck to both of you in your publications, that you remain bringing us, you know, news, and that we will be subscribing to both your publications.
Yeah, so and obviously we will all be very happy to facilitate or to coordinate that, if that's a possibility, between Canada and India, because I think both countries can benefit from such a collaboration. And in terms of the diaspora engagement, Adrienne, it would be a fantastic idea, because I don't see much of coverage, or topics of interest of the Indo-Canadian diaspora in any of the mainstream, so-called mainstream publication. As they say, there is no more a thing such as mainstream. What is a mainstream? Mainstream is like people. And within GTA, it's mostly now not just white people, so-called white guys. It's all sorts of people coming from all over the world, and the media has to reflect that. So we'll be happy to provide something on that front as well, to both of you, Ruben, Adrienne,
thank you,
and Nadira as well. Thank you for participating today, and let's keep in touch. So that will close the session today.